The topic for our discussion is Hegel's theory of state and freedom. We have already discussed Hegel's philosophical method, that is the dialectical method, and I have already discussed it in last 5 or 6 classes. Today I have to take the last class on Hegel's theory of state and freedom. That is where I am trying to place Hegel's theory of state and freedom in the larger context of his dialectical method. We have already seen that for Hegel there is a law of dialectics is operating, and the world history is moving towards larger and higher level of freedom. It can be called a world historical process. There are historical laws of dialectics which drives on this historical process in an inevitable course, and from lower level it is continuously moving upwards, although in a spiral way. We have already discussed the three basic principles of dialectics. One is the law of negation, which discusses how the law of triad is followed, the triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The second one is the law of unity and struggle of opposites, or you can say the law of contradiction. And thirdly, the law of quantitative to qualitative changes. Then we also discussed the dialectics between appearance and essence. Then we discussed the Hegel's famous saying that the actual is rational and the rational is actual or real. In some textbooks you will find that the real is the rational and the rational is the real. Another version is also the actual is rational and the rational is actual. Then we discussed Hegel's famous saying that the Minerva's owl flies after the sun sets. And then we explained Hegel's concept of the cunning of reason. Now, the whole thing shows that there are certain historical, inevitable laws of development for world history, and we have also discussed that first there is rect or right or the thesis, which implies the abstract right of the individual. It gives rise to its antithesis, which is called by Hegel as moralitat or social morality. This is the antithesis. And thesis, there is negation of thesis by antithesis, and then there is negation of antithesis, and ultimately a higher level. On the higher level, the synthesis appears, which Hegel calls Sittlichkeit, or the ethical order. The negative aspects of thesis are rejected. The negative aspects of antithesis are rejected, but the positive aspects of thesis and the positive aspects of antithesis are retained in the higher level of synthesis. This is how the continuous spiral process of development takes place. Methodologically, it is an unending process. In Sittlichkeit, we have again the three moments. The thesis is the family, and its antithesis is civil society, or you can say bourgeois society. Thesis is negated by antithesis. Antithesis is again negated, and ultimately we come to the higher level, the third one. When the third one appears, that is the synthesis, that is the state. In family, there are both positive aspects and negative aspects. Positive aspects are that there is a bond of love, affection, naked selfishness, crude selfishness is overcome because the individuals are bound by affinity, affection, love. So the individual self is undergoing a process of expansion, going beyond himself or herself, transcending himself. But the negative aspect of family is that it is very narrow, sectarian. The scope of family is restricted. It is confined to the family only. You know, when people say it is a question of my khandan, मेरे खानदान के सवाल है, it is a boasting of your family tradition, your blood, your dynasty. This narrowness is the negative aspect, demerit of the family. Now, family is the thesis, and it gives rise to the antithesis, the civil society, the bourgeois civil society. In this antithesis, in bourgeois civil society, there are also merits and demerits, negative aspect, positive aspects and negative aspects. What are the merits of civil society? In the civil society, there is a kind of broadness, a liberal attitude is possible in the civil society. you come out of your narrow family identity, your bonds, narrow sectarian bonds of your family, your uh, caste or class, or your race. So, other kinds of smaller barriers, huh, surrounded by narrow confines, narrow boundaries, that is overthrown, that is surpassed into the civil society. You can see in the bourgeois civil society, in cities, in urban life, there are thousands and thousands of individuals. They are not so much concerned about their village identity or dynastic identity or family identity, or say in Indian context you can say caste identity. These are not very significant in their lives, in their minds. But on the other hand, civil society has its negative aspects as well. What are these negative aspects or demerits? That is, civil society is composed of selfish individuals. These individuals are pursuing their self interest, and therefore they are oblivious of the greater identity to which they individually belong. This narrow selfishness, this self centered identity, entity of the individual, that is the negative aspect in civil society. Now, thesis, that is family, is negated by civil society, the antithesis. And both thesis and antithesis are negated, and both are transcended into a higher level, the third identity, that is called the third moment, that is called the state. So you can say that through the negation, family is transcended into a new family, a higher level of family, a family which is a broader entity, the nation state. It is devoid of the narrowness of the thesis. Through negation by the antithesis civil society, it has attained, it has been sublated, it has been sublimated into a higher entity, that is the state. State contains within it the good elements of family and also as well as the good elements of the civil society. There is one point which must be emphasized, that there is a misreading of Hegel. Some people have interpreted Hegel's theory of state as something which is extremely statist, as if the individual is smashed under the all powerful state. But this understanding is not correct. When we go through, say, through the interpretation given by many new scholars, we find that Hegel's state considers the civil society as important for itself. Civil society and family are two important moments for the state. Civil society and state are mutually dependent. State requires the civil society, its economic life, and the civil society requires the state. Although the state is superior to the civil society, although the state is an end in itself, the state is the final destination, which is not a means for, for serving some other purpose. It is not a means, it is not an instrument. It is an end all. It is an end in itself. So the point is that the point is that the individual life, individual entity is also important for Hegel. Although ultimately the emphasis is on the state, but that does not mean the state establishes its supremacy through the elimination of the individual, through the abolition of the civil society. That is a wrong interpretation of Hegel. In this connection, we should also mention that Hegel talks about different corporations and associations, local communities, through which the individual exists. Actually, for Hegel, in contrast to John Locke, individual freedom cannot be pursued independently of the state. That is not possible. We know when Locke was talking about the state of nature, he thought that the individuals existed prior to the state, and when they had some practical inconveniences, they wanted to enter into a social contract and created the political society. And he also implied that there was a second contract by which the government was created, but the very purpose of the contract was to ensure the liberty of the individual, the rights of the individual. That means individual can enjoy freedom, could enjoy freedom, at least conceptually. It is possible for the individual to enjoy freedom even outside the state, even prior to the state. But in order to protect and ensure and guarantee individual rights, Locke mentioned three basic rights: right to life, right to liberty, and right to property. These three can be better protected by the state. So it is a question of limited state or limited government in the theory of Locke. That is why John Locke is called the father of Western liberalism. In contrast to that, Hegel is trying to emphasize that individual's freedom is basically a moral concept. It is not to be conceptualized as something related to self-interest, not that. Individual's freedom is a moral freedom, and this moral freedom makes it possible for the individual to attain moral development of the sense of right and wrong, just and unjust. In fact, man is outside the state